I'm running for president in 2016, and the focus is going to be about if I run, how do you create high sustained economic growth?
Well, Jeb Bush might be running for president. He might be following his brother's lead on Iraq. And while we're talking about mights, Nancy Pelosi hasn't been heard from for a while, so she's got to become relevant again, dropping a little bomb about Republicans and Obamacare. Here comes the political animal in motion. First up, former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Dick Cheney, Daily Beast contributor, CEO of Christie Strategies, LLC, Ron Christie, and joined by staff writer for the Weekly Standard, Michael Warren. Gentlemen, I thank you both for being with us. Let's get right to it. We got a lot to cover here. Ron, I'm coming to you first. Is it not fair to say that Jeb Bush is making, even though it's early, a lot of these little political blunders here and there are leaving a bad taste in people's mouths, and maybe he's not ready to be president yet?
Well, I think it's too soon to say, Ed. And I think when you look at someone who was the former two-term governor of Florida, one of our largest states in the country, given the fact the way he had such able stewardship in Florida, I think he is prepared to be president. But the question that I think that Jeb Bush needs to ask himself and his staff needs to be asking themselves is, he has to have a better policy position on, here's where I differ or agree with my brother. Here's where I differ or agree with my father, both former presidents of the United States. And fairly or not, I think people are going to judge him based on his father, based on his brother. And at this early juncture, I don't think it will hurt him just yet, Ed, but he's got to have a more clear and concise set of answers to distinguish himself or to agree with the policies adopted by his sibling and his father.
Michael, I think that's a great point. I know he's probably trying to be real nice to his family and keep everything real cozy, but he has got to set a hard line here. If he doesn't and thinks he can get away with this until 2016, until the election, the convention even, personally, I think he's dead wrong, and people will make him pay for that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we also have to sort of recognize how things have changed since the last time Jeb Bush ran for office, which was 2002. I mean, that was before YouTube. That was really before a lot of people were using the internet in the way they do now. Certainly long before Twitter and Facebook became actual things. And so I think the campaign and the way people cover and pay attention to what people say has changed since Jeb Bush last ran for politics. And a lot of the politics have changed as well. And so I think what you're seeing here is sort of somebody who last sort of played this game over a decade ago, and all of these things have changed. Political opinions have shifted as well, and he's really struggling. I think he's really got to pull back and say, okay, let's look at the landscape in 2015 and 2016. How do I answer questions about Iraq differently than maybe I would have in my 10 years ago? A lot of the positions in the Republican Party have changed on that as well, and so I think he's what you're seeing is a guy getting his sea legs before the campaign really has started. The problem is that the campaign's already started, even if he's not in the race yet. This is, I think you're just seeing a lot of struggles here from a candidate who, needs a little oil around the joints.
Well, there you go. Talking about the sea legs here, somebody may have to throw him a life raft here to get into all this, because as you pointed out in your column in the Weekly Standard, the Republican field for president is 36 possible contenders for the nomination. This is getting ridiculous here, Michael. And number two on that point, if you're Mike Huckabee, Jeb Bush, anybody, you've got to start cutting out your swath here, because you're going to get lost in this tremendous amount of candidates.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword. It can be a good and bad thing. And I do want to say the RNC had this 36 candidate poll. I think it's a little ridiculous, over the top. I mean, a lot of the candidates included were candidates who ran last time. They're not running this time. But that being said, it is a large field, and that's a good thing for the Republican Party, because you're actually seeing these substantive debates on issues that you didn't see in 2012. You got a lot of candidates and a lot of strong candidates. But you're absolutely right that people like Mike Huckabee, Jeb Bush, folks who haven't been in the fray in the last 6, 8 years, discussing the political issues of the last 6 and 8 years, have a lot of catching up to do, just as much as some of these younger guys, folks like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, have to sort of prove their mettle, show that they, have the experience to run for president. A lot of the older guys have to show that they can still play in the game, that they're not, too over the hill. I think that plays in the politics as well as the politicking of the 2016 election.
Ron, I got less than 2 minutes left. I'm going to spin now to Nancy Pelosi, who predicted that Republicans will rue the day if the Supreme Court buys their arguments and invalidates the Obamacare health law here. Is she just blowing smoke here?
Yeah, I think she is. I think the issue is not about Republicans. It's not about politics. It's about the Constitution. It's about whether or not the Obama administration violated the Constitution by providing subsidies to people in states. And the law explicitly says otherwise. And the Democrats claim that they're for the little people. They're claiming out they're for the middle class. But what they're not claiming is that they're willing to follow the rule of law. And that is what the underlying issue here is. I think this was always an unconstitutional statute. And this is one opportunity for the Supreme Court to get it right and say the law is what the law says it is, not how Clinton or Obama or Pelosi types would like to interpret it.
Is Nancy Pelosi, Ron, even important to the national conversation anymore?
No, I think she's yesterday's news. I think it goes back to Michael's point about I think she's living in a different era. This isn't the 1990s. We're in the early part of the 21st century, and I think that the political season and the political acumen skills that she once had have left her behind.
Michael, I'll give you last word on this with about 20 seconds left. From the left, at least, they need somebody other than Nancy Pelosi because she really is a bit of an antique at this point in many political eyes, yes?
Yeah, but she's not going anywhere, and this is a problem for House Democrats. You saw Chris Van Hollen, who's sort of a young leading light in the Democratic caucus. He's running for Senate in Maryland because he didn't see any sort of pathway to leadership in the House. This is a real problem for Democrats, and I don't know if they've quite figured it out yet.
I'm not quite sure if they know yet, and I'm quite sure that maybe somebody, even in the Democratic Party, will probably say, Mrs. Pelosi, thank you very much. We need to move forward. We, unfortunately, need to do as well because we are all out of time. Michael Warren, Ron Christie, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. The political animal is going to be in session for a long time after this, right up until 2016. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Take care, Ed.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. And again, we need to find out about Nancy Pelosi, but Jeb Bush, boy, there's a lot to talk about here. Stay with us. The Hardline continues.